he was telling me that he was working as an officer in an Atlanta community. He was talking to some kids one day, had his car parked, talking to some kids, and then he drove off. And as he got several yards away, he heard the back of his window bust. And so he didn't know if it was gunshots or what it was. As it turns out, it was a rock. Somebody had threw a rock and busted out the back of his window. So he goes and he tries to find the kids and figure out, who did it so he can hold them accountable. So he found out who did it. He went to the kid's house, knocked on the door of the house, and he said, listen, your son threw a rock from a very long way and busted out the window of my car. We got to deal with this. So as he was talking to the parents were upset. And he said, look, here's the deal. Rather than making him and making you all pay for it, he's got to play on my baseball team, because anybody that can throw a rock that far and that accurate needs to be on my baseball team. And so it was Marquis Grissom.
All right. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Nick Carrier's Best You podcast. I am super fired up to have the one and only CJ Stewart with me today. I just want to start by saying thanks, CJ, for spending the time with me this Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, my pleasure, Nick, man. I'm excited about it as well. And we got some rain here in Atlanta. So it's a little gloomy, but I'm excited to be here with you.
Yeah, it's all right. We're going to get fired up during this interview. I just know it. To introduce you, CJ is a former Chicago Cub. You're the co-founder and CEO of Diamond Directors, which helps baseball players reach and exceed their full potential. You've worked with countless MLB players like Jason Heyward, Dexter Folwer, Andruw Jones, McCutchen, Peter Alonso, and many others. And you're also the co-founder of the nonprofit organization here in Atlanta called LEAD, whose mission is to empower an at-risk generation to lead and transform their city. So I'm pumped to get into a lot of that stuff. But basically the way I want to start today, CJ, is you grew up here in inner city Atlanta, and you basically fell in love with baseball at a really young age. At about 6 years old, you remember watching Cubs games with your grandfather. And I remember hearing you say that to practice playing baseball, you would throw up rocks to yourself and hit it with a bat, and you'd practice throwing with rocks and everything like that. And then at age 14, kind of fast forward a little bit, you met a guy named TJ Wilson who provided you with some opportunities with baseball. But I want to kind of start with the gap time in between ages 6 and 14. What were some of the things that you did during that kind of youth period of your life that you feel set you up for success moving forward?
Well, let's see. I was, like a lot of boys, very mischievous. And so, I think during that time, I was really just trying to understand the importance of discipline. So, discipline as I know it now as an adult is doing the things that you need to do even when you don't want to do them. But just discipline as a child, just, understanding the difference between right and wrong. So at that very young age, preparing me for success, which is really developing a keen understanding about what's right and what's wrong.
So what were some things that you did at a young age that taught you like the difference between right and wrong?
Oh, man.
Like, was it kind of parents that were a big influence? Was it certain experiences? Like, was it coaches? What kind of led you in the right direction?
Well, definitely my parents, and then also people within my church. And one of the things that I had a really big issue with in school was talking too much. So I got in trouble a lot around that, and I would really try to, justify it and spend a lot of time lying and saying that he started it or she started, so on and so forth. But I had to really learn how to discipline myself as a child and just make sure that, being respectful. And my mom was the disciplinarian of my family. So I got some whippings that whipped me into shape. And then, I just remember even as my father, he didn't do so much physical discipline or anything like that, but it was definitely a point where it was just like, I was starting to let him down. So as a result of having to get those calls from my teacher. So, those are just the things my parents really shaped me as a child in a major way.
Was there ever like a turning point when you went from, talking a lot in class and getting in trouble a lot and kind of getting disciplined? Was there ever a clear experience or turning point where you've kind of made a big shift the other way, or was it just kind of gradual?
Oh man. Well, ironically, it never stopped. I mean, all the way through high school, it was one of those things where I just spent a lot of time talking. So I had a couple things that was going on. One, I was conscious of. The other, I wasn't conscious of. But one of the things that I was very conscious of was, I just patience. Just kind of like one of those situations where it's like once I understand something and I get it, then I'm ready to kind of move on. And just understanding that, in the classroom, I mean, it doesn't work that way where you can just do that. So a lot of times me acting out was a result of, I get it, I'm ready to move on. But what I found out from my mom as I got into adulthood that I had ADHD. And so she did not want to share that with me when I was a child because she didn't want me to have to deal with the stigma of having, attention deficit disorder. And in that time, and even in cases now, if you have ADHD, having medication and things like that. So she really didn't want me to go down that path. But I would say, just the turning point. I mean, it followed me throughout high school. And I did have a lot of warnings from people that if I didn't get my act together and learn how to focus, that it would be a detriment. So fortunately for me now as an adult, and just going through life and just understanding the importance of just locking in, being patient and focused has helped me go further.
Gotcha. So I kind of laid out a little bit of the timeline to start. You fell in love with baseball at 6. You had this opportunity meeting this guy named TJ Wilson at age 14. At what point kind of in your baseball career / playing baseball in your childhood did you realize that playing baseball was something that you really wanted to pursue like full-heartedly and long-term?
So being born and raised in Atlanta, which is the home of the civil rights movement, we studied a lot about Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. As I got older and being in school and studying Jackie Robinson, understanding that he also was born in the state of Georgia. So these are two men that I was aspiring to be like. Here you have Dr. King on one hand, born and raised in Atlanta, Georgia, just like me. And then you got Jackie Robinson being born in Georgia, like me as well. So, for me, I think that at a very young age and being in a city where there was a racial divide, I was able to, I don't know, I guess probably just through studying, I don't know, probably by the time I was in 6th grade, I really understood the significance of Dr. King and Jackie Robinson as they were using their talents to fight against structural racism. And I think probably about fifth grade or so, I was just saying to myself, man, if I could really get good in baseball, I can use my platform as a baseball player like Jackie Robinson. And hopefully if I'm good enough, I could speak as good as Dr. King and I can really get a message out. I never got to be as good as Dr. King, and nor do I even see the need to be that good. But my life as a very young child was on a trajectory towards using baseball as a vehicle to help overcome structural racism, among many things.
Yeah, so I've mentioned a couple of times now how at age 14 you met a guy named TJ Wilson who kind of gave you some opportunities. I want you to just kind of take people through meeting him and what he was able to provide for you moving forward with your baseball career.
Meeting TJ, and he's now passed. He's passed a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago, and I remember meeting him, and he was an Atlanta police officer, and I remember him telling me that. And so here in Atlanta and across the country, I mean, relationships with African American males and police officers has been estranged in many cases, but he had this connection to baseball. And I remember we were at Westlake High School, which is the high school I was at, and he had a daughter who was a senior at the time. And so he was up at the school watching some of the baseball practices because he also had a son that was in middle school that would be matriculating to Westlake the next year. So I guess he was just trying to look and see what kind of talent our school had to see what kind of environment his son would be in. And I remember him I don't remember the exact words, but he was complimenting me on my ability to play baseball. And he asked me if I wanted to be really good at it. And I said, yeah, I really do. And so we got into the conversation of me saying, I want to play for the Chicago Cub. I mean, that's what I dreamed of as a kid. And what I did not know is this was a man who loved baseball, who was well connected with coaches and trainers. And me having the confidence to share that with him opened up amazing opportunities. So ironically, after I shared that with him, I was working out with the Cubs at 14 within a month or two of meeting him. Here I am working out in a tryout for the Chicago Cubs. Back then, there was no perfect game and all this stuff. Teams would have free agent workouts and they would go through different cities. And after the draft was over and they would just do open workouts, anybody could come. You could be 100 years old. But you could also be 14. In fact, I don't even know if I was supposed to be there. I think I was too young, but I was 6 foot tall.
Oh, wow.
Probably like 165 pounds. So I looked the part. And I'm out there. Workout went great. But what I later found out was I guess I was probably about sophomore year, T.J. Wilson told me this story about this other kid that he worked with. He was telling me that he was working as an officer in an Atlanta community, and he would ride in the neighborhood in his squad car, and he was talking to some kids one day. He had his car parked, talking to some kids, and then he drove off. And as he got several yards away, he heard the back of his window bust. And so he didn't know if it was gunshots or what it was. As it turns out, it was a rock. Somebody had threw a rock and busted out the back of his window. So he goes and he tries to find the kids and figure out, who did it so he can hold them accountable. So he found out who did it. He went to the kid's house, knocked on the door of the house, and he said, listen, your son threw a rock from a very long way and busted out the window of my car. And, we got to deal with this. So as he was talking to the parents were upset. And he said, look, here's the deal. Rather than making him and making you all pay for it, he's got to play on my baseball team, because anybody that can throw a rock that far and that accurate needs to be on my baseball team. And so it was Marquis Grissom. And true story, man. And even as I told that story one time before in the presence of Marquis, and he said, yeah, man, that was a true story. And at this point, T.J. Wilson had passed. But that's the kind of man that T.J. was. I mean, I don't remember learning a whole lot about how to play the game, but the etiquette and how to respect it and being in front of the right people at the right time was something that he taught me that I still use today when I serve young people.
Wow, that's an awesome story. When you first mentioned about how far it was, I was wondering if that's where the story was going to go. That is awesome. But there was something that you said a while back, kind of like right when you first mentioned or met T.J. Wilson, that I thought was really important. And it was when you said you met him and then you had the courage to tell him that your dream was to play for the Chicago Cubs, because I think it's really important. A lot of people think it's simply who you know and the connections that you have that's going to get you where you want to go. But a lot of times we need to take that extra step and be willing to be courageous enough to tell other people what our goals are, where we want to go in life, because the only way that other people can support you and where you want to go is if they know where you want to go. So I feel like that was kind of a really important thing that you had the courage to be able to express that to him.
Yeah, I would say the opposite of courage is confidence. And so, if you're really confident, that means that you are sure that you can do something because you've already done it before. Confident. Courage for me is based off of is needed when you are fearful. So like I'm afraid. And in that case, in saying that, I was afraid to say it because he may have said, you know what, you're never going to be any good. So that would have crushed my dreams. Or he could have said, you know, that's real arrogant of you to say you want to play professional baseball and you got a specific team. So the only thing that I had at that moment, and I just felt right, was just the courage. So courage happens in the presence of fear. And me saying it, I mean, his response was immediate. Like I said, within a couple months, man, I was working out at Panthersville Stadium in Atlanta for the Chicago Cubs. Preston Douglas was the scout that was there. Him and I still have a relationship. He drafted me twice out of high school and college.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really like that distinction between confidence and courage. I think that's key. So you went to that tryout when you were 14, and you probably didn't necessarily go in with too much of an expectation other than just be in the environment of it all. So tell me a little bit about that experience when you were 14, being around people trying out for, or practicing and trying out for the Cubs. What was that like?
So I think the key word there is to just be. You know, from what I had been seeing on television with African American players that were playing in the major leagues, I mean, they had bodies that weren't like overly muscular. And then I'm looking at my own body. At that time, I was doing push-ups and things like that. So I felt like I had a good body. I had studied those players enough, looking at the baseball cards, to see that my height was pretty comparable. I would watch them throw and compare it to the way I threw. So I felt like, you know, I really have nothing to lose. Plus, I'm young. I'm 14 years old. I can't even get drafted until I graduate from high school. So I got 4 years. So looking back at it now, I mean, I really just showed up not trying to get drafted because I couldn't, but I wanted to just learn and just start a relationship. And so with that being said, I think it just allowed me to be relaxed. And as I got older, scouts kind of perceived me as being arrogant, but I feel like I was just confident. So again, going back to confident, when I'm making a statement based on something I've done, that's confidence. I don't need courage because I know that I can do it. So that's what being there at 14 was all about. Let me figure out what I can do, so that way I have 4 years to develop the confidence that I need to now accomplish this goal.
Yeah, I like that. I like how you talk about confidence comes from experience and building up the reps and all that kind of stuff. So we've talked about courage now, and I want to stay there because, as I mentioned kind of in the introduction, you're the co-founder of this nonprofit organization called LEAD, in which you try to empower and lead 350 African American boys through high school. And you guys have some amazing stats. You guys have like a 100% high school graduation rate, 93% college enrollment, 90% scholarship rate, and what was it, 5,500 annual or some 3,500 annual service hours or something like that. Do you think that what are some of the big things that those boys don't get that you are providing them with your organization?
One of the main things that we provide is access. You know, if they do what it takes to get good, then they're going to have access to people to give them a very honest evaluation. When I say honest, I mean that if a college scout or a professional scout says that they aren't good enough, then that's what it is. You just aren't good enough. And if they say that they are good enough, so race does matter in this country. The way this country is set up, structural racism is everywhere. And so oftentimes for African Americans, especially boys, to hear no, you're constantly wanting it to be unpacked. You know, what are you saying no to? Are you saying no to my ability, or are you not giving me the benefit of the doubt because of my race? Are you saying no to my ability, or are you? Is this a lack of respect and trust? So, my success as a player has allowed me to develop some really awesome relationships. So if a young man is good enough to get in front of Tim Corbin at Vanderbilt, I can put him in front of Tim Corbin. If a young man is good enough to be in front of the Alex Anthopoulos, the GM for the Braves, I can put him in front of him. So that's a pretty amazing promise that you can give to boys, and guarantees that if you do what you're supposed to do, I promise you and I guarantee you I will put you in the right place at the right time to get a yes or a no.
That's awesome. I think that it's super cool that you're able to give them access in a way that people, don't necessarily look at them differently because of their race, essentially, is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, I mean, listen, people have a lot going on. I mean, especially if you're living a life of busyness, and when it comes down to, making judgments. I mean, I make judgments of people. I mean, prejudice is not something that you can turn off. Prejudice and power can create negativity. That's where you can start getting into issues with regards to race, where you now have racism. So everybody has prejudice. Everybody. You're looking at people, you're trying to figure things out. And then when you start giving that prejudice a negative power, now you have racism. And so, because those things exist, one of the things that I really focus on doing is starting all of my relationships from a place of conviction, and really understanding the heart and the soul of people, so that way we can develop a connection. And so to be able to be that, have that level of protection for Black boys is something that I don't take for granted. And it was something that has been in me for a very long time. Thus the reason for me wanting to aspire to be like Jackie Robinson and Dr. King.
Yeah. So you've mentioned that word a few times to me now, both in this interview and prior to the interview, the word conviction, and that's how you start relationships, with conviction. Describe a little bit about what you mean by that.
So the opposite of conviction in its negative form would be guilt, and which, making somebody guilty is very paralyzing, and convicting someone is calling them to account, and it's very empowering. Even when I think about my relationship with Jesus Christ, I'm a follower of Christ, and so my relationship with Christ is only through conviction, where I looked at myself up against Christ and what's expected of me as a follower, and compared that to the life that I was living, and saying, okay, this isn't good, so I'm going to make a change. So it started with conviction. Been married for 23 years here, this year, November 23rd. And so conviction is the thing that made me say yes to my wife, and a marriage where I will be faithful forever. It takes conviction in order to make that that kind of commitment. But even with Lead, I was convicted. Before I started doing Lead, I had a very successful for-profit business where I was developing major leaguers: Jason Heyward, Dexter Folwer, Andruw, McCutchen, so on and so forth. We've developed a lot of major leaguers, and I've been their hitting coach. And so life was good. I mean, I'm from the inner city of Atlanta, played professional baseball. My career is over. I'm getting paid to teach people how to hit. And I'm in the suburbs doing it in the East Cobb area, which is very big for baseball. And one of my clients, Stan Conway, who's a very wealthy, successful real estate developer, happens to be a white male. I was training his middle school age white son. And Stan said three things to me. So essentially what he said, let's call it a pitch. So he threw me 3 fastballs right down the middle, and I swung and missed every last one of them. Number one, I consider myself to be this great coach. And he said, if you were as good as you said you were, why are your rates so low? So I was like, dang, because one thing that I found out is Bentleys never go on sale. The good stuff always costs. So if you're really good, your rate should reflect that. Then he said, if you were as good as you said you were, CJ, he said, why is it that people can get such easy access to you? If you're really good, you shouldn't be easily accessible. But in the third pitch, which struck me out and really convicted me, was he said there's a decline of black males in baseball, and specifically in the inner city of Atlanta, where you're from, CJ, and you're not doing anything about it. So if I would have felt guilt, I would have done nothing about it. So that conviction was very empowering to me. It called me to account. It made me stop and look at what I was doing and why I was doing it. And then Stan also agreed to support me and help me financially with the creation of Lead. So, conviction for me is a powerful thing, and it is a prerequisite for change. So you're not going to experience sustainable change if you don't start with conviction.
Wow, that's powerful stuff. That's awesome, man. I don't even just like I feel like I want to have that feeling about something moving forward as well. That's so cool. I want to go back to kind of the things that you help out the different boys in the Lead nonprofit organization with. So like you said, you give them access and everything like that. But what are some other things that you are able to provide them in terms of like personal self-improvement and building character and all that kind of thing that they don't have access to if it wasn't for this organization?
Yeah, so our mission, so what we do every day is empower them, an at-risk generation, to lead and transform their city of Atlanta. And so when we define empowerment, that is given responsibility and authority. And so our vision, so if we accomplish our mission that we do on an everyday basis, then our lead ambassadors will lead their city of Atlanta to lead the world. And so we know that could happen because, again, even with Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who was born and raised in the inner city of Atlanta and went to Booker T. Washington High School, which is our home base for Lead, he was able to do amazing things that benefited several people throughout the world. So our vision is for our lead ambassadors to lead their city of Atlanta, to lead the world. So our pillars of excellence are academics, athletics, civic responsibility, and commerce. Those are our pillars of excellence, the things we focus on. And then our core values are excellence, humility, integrity, loyalty, stewardship, and teamwork. So those are values that we focus on through our year-round programming. So we're a 12-month a year program year-round. And so we use those core values, 6 of them, and teach them once a month throughout the year. Baseball is very important because it is a game where you're going to have to experience a lot of failure, and you can't succeed without it. So those interpersonal skills that they develop are amazing. And we use baseball as a vehicle to help them overcome crime, poverty, and racism. Those are the 3 curveballs that they face as African-American boys in this city of Atlanta and in this country that are set up to threaten their livelihood and having a fulfilling life. So crime, poverty, racism, and so baseball gives us an opportunity to help them to develop those interpersonal skills to win at a game of life.
Gotcha. And so I keep seeing the number 350 is how many people in the organization. How do you guys go about getting people in the organization? Is it people applying to be in it, or how does that work?
Yeah, so 350 boys, that's grades 6 through 12. And so our partnership is with Atlanta Public Schools. Atlanta Public Schools serves a little over 52,000 students, and 80% of those students live at or below the poverty level. Okay, here in the city of Atlanta, if you're born in poverty, you have a 4% chance of making it out. So that's going up to the plate 100 times and getting 4 hits. If you're playing on a team that allows you to get 4 hits out of 100, it's not a very good team. And so Atlanta has a whole lot of work to do. Again, going back to our mission, empowering that rich generation to lead and transform their city of Atlanta. Atlanta needs a lot of transformation. Atlanta is the number one city in America with income inequality. The gap between the haves and the have-nots is the largest in Atlanta than anywhere in the United States of America. This is the home of the civil rights movement. So for us, we don't have time to be playing baseball for recreation. We're using this game to develop the leaders that this city and this country needs. So with that being said, at the middle school level, we have 8 middle schools within Atlanta Public Schools that we partner with. And that partnership is with an MOU with the principal. So the principal's job is to, number one, get a liaison that we will pay, a liaison in the building whose job it is to identify 40 boys that are struggling with grades, attendance, and behavior that live at or below the poverty level. Okay, so most people do not want to deal with those kids. Okay, the reason why we can deal with those kids is because I was once a part of that, and I see myself as a worthy case study to evaluate, to understand how you can get out of poverty to a place of prosperity through baseball. So they identify those 40 boys. And so the first semester of school, while they're playing football and basketball, we have a program manager from LEAD, who's a LEAD ambassador alum that works for us, that goes into the school and administers once a week core value training. We use a curriculum called Habitudes, which is images to help athletes develop positive habits and attitudes. And so this curriculum is used with the Atlanta Braves, Alabama Crimson Tide, several MLB teams, NFL, and so on and so forth. And so that's done once a week. That's done once a week for the first semester. And so then second semester, the boys that have shown the most improvement now earn a jersey to play in our middle school league. So we only provide 20 jerseys, and a lot of people say, well, what happened to the other 20 boys that don't get a jersey? Well, it's kind of like what happened to the other people that wanted to be on your podcast that didn't. I mean, I got a chance to be on here. I'm here, and I'm fortunate that I am. But it's incentive for them to work harder. So we're not scouting out the perfect kids. We're scouting out the counted out boys that are struggling with grades, attendance, and behavior. And so then they have the opportunity to matriculate to our fall legacy league, which is for high school students only. So we are Atlanta's first fall instructional league that focuses on African-American boys and helping them to develop the talent, habits, and skills that they need to launch educational opportunities, baseball. So you got 100 boys out here that are fighting for one of those 40 ambassador slots to continue throughout the entire year with us. And so that 350 boys, some success stories. One in particular, I think about Austin Evans, who will graduate from Texas A&M this year. He did not play baseball at Texas A&M, and in fact, he was not a very good baseball player at all when he was with us. But Austin Evans really loved the leadership skills that he could develop in our organization. And while he was there for 3 years, 3 of the 4 years, he was off-campus senator at Texas A&M University. And he passed a bill to erect the statue of the first African-American graduate from Texas A&M University. So
wow.
that's the power of the work that we get a chance to do. But here, even this year, in this year's class, we have Devin Clinkscales, who's going to graduate from Booker T. Washington High School, same high school as Dr. King. COVID-19 made it impossible for him to showcase his improvement this spring season. I really believe had he played, he would have been able to earn a baseball scholarship. He will admit that he took the opportunities to get in front of scouts. He took it very lightly. And so it didn't really start to click until this winter, where several other ambassadors were signing scholarships, that he says, you know what, let me make the commitment to be good. And he was making it. Yeah, so he was really locked in and really willing to make the commitment. And I really believe that had he played the spring season, totally different mind space and physical space, he would have earned a scholarship. So COVID-19 is over. And one of the things that he's really learned, that he said has created a paradigm shift, this was such a convicting moment for him. He understood the power of focusing on the present, like right now, taking advantage of those opportunities. Same thing that I had to do when I was in front of the Cubs. And so, but he wants to own a sports bar, and he wants it to be in the inner city of Atlanta. So because he's had the courage to say that, one of my good friends who works with Inspire Brand, which has several other restaurants in it, namely Buffalo Wild Wings, Devin Clinkscales is going to be working as a marketing intern for Buffalo Wild Wings Foundation.
No way.
A step away from being able to, Buffalo Wild Wings is the largest sports bar in America. So what I'm trying to do is like use my life as a case study to help prepare these African-American boys and just say, hey, listen, if we do this right, you'll present yourself with a lot of confidence, which people love and are attracted to. But absent of confidence, courage. So I'm fearful to even speak out loud that I want to play for the Cubs, or I speak out loud that I want to own my own sports bar. But that's when you got to be courageous and say it, because there are several people out there that really want to serve. So that's what Lead does within our mission.
Yeah. That's awesome. Those are amazing success stories, and it comes full circle with having the courage to speak your goals out there, out into the world. And one thing I want to kind of go back to is you mentioned how you guys kind of have 40 boys selected right at the beginning, and then 20 of those boys get to earn a jersey. What is maybe the difference between maybe the 20 people that earn the jersey versus the 20 people that don't, or maybe rephrased, what gets people, what's the difference between somebody who really buys into the system and the process versus somebody who maybe doesn't buy in right away?
Yeah. So let me see. I want to unpack this. So I trust that if I don't do it good, you'll make me go deeper. So the system that we have in place is based off of our values. Excellence, for instance, that's our first core value. That means to meet expectations. So we expect progress with your grades, attendance, and behavior. So we're not very attracted to the kid that already has a 4.0, because any improvement he makes, it's just, you're good, you're gonna be fine. So we want the kid who has got a 1.0 and progress, we want a 2.0. So we have an amazing organization. So if you can be excellent, meeting expectation, what that does is it says it trains a young man to say, okay, Coach CJ, what do you expect from me? I expect you to go from a 1.0 to a 2.0 in 6 months. All right. And then it forces him to start asking, okay, well, what do I need to do? Okay, well, that's very simple, because let me just tell you this. If you go to school and have perfect attendance, well, you know what? Forget perfect attendance. If you go to school 90% of the time and you have B behavior, forget it, C. You go to school 90% of the time in C behavior, like me when I was in school talking too much, and you do your homework 1 day a week, then you're gonna have a D average. If you do 2 days a week, I think you'll have a C average. You do your homework 3 days a week. Now, again, this is just coming to school 90% of the time, C behavior. You do 3 days a week, you're going to have a B average. You do 4 days a week, you're going to have an A average. So it's literally like, okay, so based off of that, what do you have the capacity to do? And if he says, I can do 2 days, okay, that's great. Then that's the standard. 2 days. We're going to build habits around you doing that. That's attainable. I'm not going to ask you to do 4 days of homework. And in fact, as an advocate, I'm telling your teacher, look, you're not going to get it. You're going to get 2 days. And then, and that's it. And so, in having them develop that character helps them to move through our system. For the first 3 months of the year, August, September, and October, that's the assessment phase. November, December, January, that's the build phase. So at that point, we're building habits and we're engaging them. So the third phase, so that's August, September, October, November, December, January. February, March, and April is the empowerment phase. So now we're starting to give them responsibility and authority. And then the fourth phase of the year is maintenance. So we don't change our system for anybody. I don't care who you are. I mean, it could be any kid. Whoever comes into our organization, they're going to start out in the assessment phase, move to the engagement phase, empowerment, and then maintenance. So kids being able to have that kind of structure, knowing that lastly, I'll say that's powerful for us is what we call the C, S-E-A. So S-E-A, the C. Standards, expectations, and accountability. We set very clear standards. Our expectations are very clear, and the accountability is swift. We will onboard you with excellence, and we will get you out of here with excellence as well. Like, we're not playing around. If you have trauma in your life and you're being physically abused at home, you want to tell us that. We have resources to help that. If your house burns down, you want to be with us. You don't want to miss a practice of mine because your house burned down. Nothing. That's a part of the relationship building that we have to make sure that we give you everything that you need. Now, but if you're not with us, then you're not under our protection. If you are, you are. So when I talk like that to boys and making it very clear and making promises and guarantees, they want to be with us.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, no, I really think those three standards, expectations, accountability are super key. And I really like how you kind of laid out the few different phases that you all go through. Sounds like a super powerful method that you guys have. So I read something that was in an article that you were kind of interviewed about, and it says that you discovered that the youth think that talent is the ceiling when it's actually the floor. And I think that's a kind of a struggle that a lot of people really have. They think that if I'm not immediately equipped to be able to do something, then I'm not able to do it. It's my ceiling. So I kind of want you to just talk about the importance of not minimizing what you're capable of based off of your talent.
Yeah, so talent is what you do well. Habits is what you do well repeatedly without fault. And then skills is what you do well repeatedly without fault while under stress. So I think that one of the things that I do well is with respect to Dr. King, who's one of my heroes. I think I do a good job of speaking with passion and conviction. I don't have a good habit of speaking with conciseness. And I don't have the skill of speaking while under stress. So there may be some questions that could be asked of me that, may not make me look like a qualified CEO. But with that being said, that's why I'm not Dr. King and leading this movement of millions of people. What I am skilled at is coaching. I know how to move people regardless of where you are, which is why we have the framework that we have. So, people just got to understand, again, that's why conviction is so important, is you can't make it in this world with just talent. Skills pay the bills. If whatever you're talented at, you're at the floor, you're at the bottom, but you can be built up. So recognizing the talent that you have or you do not have. And that's one of the things that we're very clear on with our boys is, okay, you're 14 years old. When I was 14, I was trying out for the Chicago Cubs. You're 5'2". You don't run well. You lack the commitment to become a better runner. So right now, chances of you playing baseball at the University of Georgia, it's not going to happen. It's not. You don't have what it takes. Now, with that being said, if you want to be in our program and you want to prove me wrong, you can. I'm usually not wrong on those kind of things. But habits, these are things that you do well repeatedly without fault. It requires commitment and discipline. And those are two things that a lot of people avoid. And I avoided it for many years of my life and have had convicting experiences that have helped me. Commitment is a promise made to yourself for yourself. Forget about anybody else. I made a commitment to be available to do this podcast. I made a commitment to be honest. If you ask me a question right now I can't answer, and maybe I should be able to answer, I'm just going to say, you know what? I don't have an answer. I should have an answer. So that's a promise that I've made to myself and for myself. And then discipline is doing the things that I need to do that I don't want to do. So as much as I'm excited about being on this show, I would probably much rather be working out, a number of other different things. But discipline has me seated here, locked in, and focused on commitment and discipline. So give me somebody with some talent, help them develop the commitment and discipline that they need. They're going to develop habits and skills pay the bills.
That's awesome. I love it. I love how articulate you are with breaking down the definitions of these individual words, because I think the distinction is really important to kind of see where your gaps lie and the things that you kind of need to work on and improve upon. Down to the last few questions, I think I would be remiss if I didn't ask this one right here. So we've mentioned some of the top baseball players that you've worked with, and you've worked with, like I said, countless baseball players. What's really the difference between the people who you work with that kind of make it to that pinnacle versus the people who don't quite get there?
Mindset is the key, and I really work diligently to help my guys and just people that I coach in general to be diligent about their mindset. So what I found out today, actually, when I was doing some Bible study, and it was talking about the importance of diligence. So before the word coach was used in athletics, it was used as a means of transportation. So in Scotland, a diligence coach was the compartment that you sat in while you wait to be transported. And then a coachman had these reins and was controlling a horse. So diligence is the earnest of doing something, doing it with earnest and commitment. But before it was used in athletics, a diligence coach. So I am a diligent coach for the people that I have been called to serve. If you are in my life and you have been, and I have been called to serve you, I'm going to do it. And if I'm not, then I won't. And so just thinking about that, let's see, a focus box. So right now I see this box that I'm in here. On the right side is things that I do wrong. On the left side is things that I do right. The problem for a lot of people is we try to go from wrong to right and skipping over the importance of making an adjustment, which is down at the bottom. So I got to know that what I'm doing is wrong, which is very convicting. I got to do something different, which leads to me doing it right. But then when I do it right, rather than trying to do it better, I got to focus on doing it again. Mm. And so that's the difference between, my hitters. When I think about Heyward, here's what I'm doing wrong. Here's what I need to do different. I'm now doing it right. Let me focus on doing it again. Peter Alonso, the same thing. And one of the things with these guys as well too is their understanding of capacity. I mean, so yeah, it'd be great to be a 5-tool player, but these guys, they don't have. I mean, Peter Alonso is not going to go out here and try to figure out how to lead the league in stolen bases. He's a hitter, so he's not gonna waste time trying to be excellent at that thing, meeting that expectation when he needs to focus on hitting and hitting well. So with that focus, I train my guys to know what to say no to and what to say yes to.
Gotcha. I love that. I love it. Well, down to the last two questions here, CJ. I really think that these are going to be more personal questions here. So I think that in order to get closer to the best version of yourself, it's really important to try to visualize what you want that person to look like and what you want that person to be capable of. So I want you to take a second to visualize the best version of CJ Stewart. And I want you to think, does this person have a particular skill or piece of knowledge that the current version of myself does not yet have? And if so, what is it?
So my mission in life is to be significant, serving millions, bringing them into a relationship with Jesus Christ, started with my wife, Kelly, my now 18-year-old daughter, Mackenzie, and my 12-year-old daughter, McKenna. So, the future me is serving millions of people. When I use the word serve, your significance comes from using your success and giving it to others. And so, serving, but it also requires partnership, meaning that I've got some weaknesses, and in serving you can make me better, and vice versa. So it's not like helping and fixing people are very different than serving. Serving brings that partnership. So when I think about my future self, the skill that I don't have right now is patience. Is what I pray about, and patience, I'm defining that as waiting without anger. So, waiting, patience, patience. I need patience. So that way, I can just be more healthy mentally, and not try to do things outside of God's will. I mean, even with being on this podcast, I feel like it's within His will for me to spend this time with you. Your questions have been a blessing to me. I mean, I'm fulfilled. I don't feel like anything is taken away from me, but sometimes I can get impatient and commit to doing things that I shouldn't do.
I like that a lot. Well, before I ask the last question, CJ, I want to start by acknowledging you. I think that your ability to use certain words in a particular way and really define the words that you're using and why you're using them. I mean, like right there, you took the time to say, I want to have patience, and that's patience without fear. You've talked about confidence. You've talked about courage. You talked about habits and skills and everything like that. And I just love how diligent you are with the words that you use and the passion that you bring behind them. I think it's really unique and really special.
Thank you.
Of course. Well, I want to make sure everybody goes out and learns more about you and supports everything that you're doing. So make sure you guys go check out his for-profit business, diamonddirectors.com, and his nonprofit organization that we've talked a lot about, leadtolegacy.org. Is there anywhere else where people should go to learn more about you and everything like that?
So I am on Facebook. And so you look up CJ Stewart, and it's me. I think the profile picture is me in a red jacket in Atlanta, and I'm flipping a ball up in the air. So I'm on there. I would caution you though is I'm consequential. So there's a lot of topics that I talk about on there, different things that may convict you. So if I convict you, that's great. That's what I want to be able to do. But I do use social media in a way where I can be challenged and learn things. And I'm on LinkedIn, and then I'm on Instagram as I am CJ Stewart, and on Twitter, CJ Stewart Lead. And all I ask you is, if you challenge what I say, you're not going to get any response from me. But if you challenge why I said what I said, then we can have a dialogue where I can learn from you. And that's what I want, because I do want to become that better version of myself. And I'm not going to be able to do that by myself. So I'm just glad that I get an opportunity to engage with people that can challenge me.
Again, I love that distinction between don't challenge necessarily what I say, but you can challenge why I say it. I love it. So last question, CJ, is I think that in order to get closer to the best version of ourselves, it's a constant journey. I don't think we're ever at that best version. And I also believe that it's a unique journey. I think the way that I'm going to get closer to the best version of myself is going to be a little bit different than the way that you get closer to the best version of yourself. So again, a question for you personally. If you could currently work on or do 3 things to get closer to that best version of yourself, what are those 3 things that you could currently do or currently work on?
I would say be in the company of people that I don't like. I would say live every day ready to die. Golly, let's see. I don't know. I think those 2 right there, man. I think if I try to think of a third one, I think it'll be stretching. But I mean, like, those really come top of mind for me, is just being willing to just be around people like that I just do not like, and just finding the value out of those people for them to be able to help me. Again, we challenge. So I don't like you, but I'm challenging you and asking you why you're doing what you're doing. And then it's like, wow, man, you are pretty awesome. So starting from that place of conviction can give a connection. But then just, living every day, living to die. I mean, one day I'm going to die. And I got an opportunity to give both of my grandmothers communion before they passed. And I knew very quickly and they were older age, in their 90s, mid 90s. And I knew that after I gave them communion as a deacon, because they were both fallen ill, I knew they were going to leave the world, because for them, it was nothing else to do. They had a strong legacy in place. So if I can do that and not have regret, then I can leave this world in peace, and it holds me accountable for being the best version of myself every day.
That's awesome. A couple of great things right there. Well, I appreciate it, CJ. That's all we got.
Awesome, man. Thank you for your questions. So this was amazing.
Of course. Thank you.